The moment I saw her sitting at our table, wearing the dress I almost bought last spring, I didn't cry. I didn't throw water in anyone's face. I just quietly set down my clutch, smoothed the front of my blazer, and said, "I'll have a club soda, please," to the waiter who had no idea what was happening. That was the night everything changed. Not just for me. For all of us. Let me back up. My name is Christine, and 5 years ago, I married a man named Fletcher at a small vineyard outside of Charlottesville, Virginia. It rained that afternoon, the soft kind that barely makes a sound, and my dad walked me down a gravel path lined with white dahlias. Fletcher cried when he saw me. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the person. Fletcher was an architect. He had that kind of focused intelligence that made you feel like, when he was talking to you, you were the only person in the room. He drew things by hand still, actual pencil on paper, and he'd leave little sketches around the apartment. A lamp he wanted to redesign. A building he'd seen from the train. Our dog, Miso, sleeping in a patch of sun. I kept them all in a shoebox on the top shelf of the closet. We bought a condo in Richmond 3 years into the marriage. 2 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, a kitchen with south-facing windows that made the whole space glow in the afternoon. We split everything: mortgage, utilities, the Costco membership. I worked as a senior compliance analyst at a regional bank. Not glamorous, but I was good at it, and it paid well. I had my own checking and savings at a completely separate institution from where Fletcher banked. My mom always said, even in a happy marriage, keep your own account. I didn't fully understand why until I did. By year 4, something had shifted. Fletcher started working late. Not unusual for an architect running his own small firm, but the quality of his presence changed when he was home. He'd sit at dinner and look slightly past me, like he was waiting for something I wasn't going to say. His phone started going face down on the counter. He began going to the gym on Saturday mornings, which was new, and coming home with wet hair that smelled like a different shampoo than the one we had in our shower. I noticed. Of course I noticed, but I told myself a dozen reasonable explanations, the way you do when you're not ready to know the truth yet. Then came the anniversary, our 5th anniversary. I had made the reservation myself at Marigold, this French-American place in Carytown that we'd talked about going to for years. It was the kind of restaurant where you book 2 months out, and the prefix is $90 a head, and the lighting is just low enough to make everyone look like they're in a painting. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks. Fletcher had seemed distracted that whole week, quieter than usual. When I mentioned the reservation at breakfast the morning of, he said, "Right, yes, of course," and went back to his coffee. I thought he was stressed about a project deadline. I got my hair blown out after work. I wore the navy wrap dress he'd once told me made me look like I belonged on a yacht. I arrived at Marigold first. The hostess led me to our table near the window. I'd requested it specifically, and I sat down and ordered sparkling water and looked out at the street, watching people walk by in the September evening. I was happy. I remember being actually, genuinely happy. Fletcher texted at 7:14, running a few minutes behind. "Don't order without me." I didn't. I waited. I looked at the menu I'd already read online 3 times. I rearranged my fork. He walked in at 7:31, and he was not alone. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back loosely, and she was wearing a dusty rose slip dress, the kind of dress you wear when you want someone to notice you. She was laughing at something he'd said as they came through the door, and Fletcher had his hand on the small of her back. And they looked. God. They looked like a couple. Like the kind of couple who gets a good table at restaurants like this. The hostess was saying something to them. Fletcher looked up, scanned the room, and found me. The laugh stopped. For a moment, none of us moved. Then the hostess began walking toward the window table, toward me, with both of them behind her, and I realized, with the strange calm that I still don't entirely understand, that he had not made a mistake. He had not accidentally shown up with the wrong person. He had brought her here, to our anniversary dinner, to my table. The hostess said, "Your full party has arrived," and gestured to the 2 seats across from me. I said, "Thank you so much," and smiled at her. Fletcher sat down. His face had gone the color of old concrete. The woman, her name was Tara. I would learn this later. She worked at the firm he'd partnered with on a mixed-use development in Scott's Addition. She sat down too, slowly, with the expression of someone who has just understood that the plan they agreed to was not the plan that was described to them. I picked up my menu. The waiter appeared. I ordered the duck confit and a glass of the burgundy. Fletcher ordered nothing. Tara ordered nothing. The waiter looked between the 3 of us and disappeared. "Christine," Fletcher started. Don't, I said pleasantly. We're at Marigold. It's our anniversary. Let's not make a scene. He blinked. I ate the bread. What happened inside me in those minutes is hard to describe accurately. It wasn't numbness. I've heard people say they went numb, and this wasn't that. It was more like a very sudden and complete clarity, the kind that strips away everything soft and leaves only what's load-bearing. I thought about the wet hair, and the face-down phone, and the Saturday mornings. I thought about the shoebox of sketches. I thought about my separate bank account, and my mother, and the fact that I had paid for this reservation on my own credit card. I thought, I am going to need documentation. I excused myself to use the restroom. I took my phone. In the single-occupancy bathroom with its vessel sink and eucalyptus hand soap, I called my closest friend, Deb, who is also a paralegal. I need you to listen to me, I said, and I told her everything I'd just witnessed in approximately 10 seconds. Don't touch anything on his phone, she said immediately. Don't delete anything on yours. If you have access to any joint accounts, log in right now and take screenshots of current balances. Don't move money yet. Just document, okay? And Christine? You're going to be fine. I promise you that. I took the screenshots. Our joint account, we had one, just for household expenses, mortgage and utilities and groceries, showed a balance of $4,318. I screenshotted it, emailed it to myself from my personal email, then deleted the sent email from my sent folder. Then I fixed my lipstick, which didn't actually need fixing, and walked back to the table. My duck confit had arrived. I ate it. It was excellent. The cherry gas streak had just the right amount of acid. Fletcher spent the meals staring at the tablecloth. Tara left around 8:15, quietly, with a murmured excuse that nobody acknowledged. After she was gone, Fletcher tried 3 times to say something, and each time I redirected the conversation to the food, the wine, the architecture of the space. Had he noticed the exposed beams? Did he know when the building dated from? When the check came, I paid it. All of it. His half, her water, everything. This was already charged to my card, I said. Happy anniversary, Fletcher. I drove home alone. I did not cry in the car. I did not cry when I got home and found Miso waiting at the door, tail going. I sat on the kitchen floor with the dog in my lap for about 20 minutes, not crying, just breathing, thinking about what came next. Fletcher came home around 11. He stood in the bedroom doorway and said, Christine, I owe you an explanation. You do, I said. But not tonight. Tonight I need you to sleep in the guest room. He started to say something else. Fletcher, I said. Please. He went. The next morning, I called 3 family law attorneys in Richmond. The first had a 3-week wait for a consultation. The second was out of network on my legal services benefit through work. The third, a woman named, had a cancellation that afternoon and could see me at 2 o'clock. I went. I brought printed screenshots. I brought a timeline I'd written out on a yellow legal pad that morning, every instance of changed behavior I could remember, with approximate dates. I brought the credit card statement showing the Marigold charge. I told her everything, calmly, in the order it happened. She listened. Then she said, Virginia is an equitable distribution state. That means marital assets get divided fairly, not necessarily equally. How is the condo titled? Both names, I said. And who has been paying the mortgage? We both have. From the joint account, which we both contribute to equally. She nodded. Do you have documentation of your individual contributions to that account? I did. I had 18 months of transfer records from my personal checking to the joint account, every second of the first of the month, same amount. I had kept them because I keep everything. I am a compliance analyst. Documentation is not a habit for me, it is a reflex. Good, she said. That's good. She explained the process. Separation, discovery, negotiation, potential mediation. Virginia requires no separation period for divorce on fault grounds, and adultery is a fault ground in Virginia. One of the few states where it still matters legally. It doesn't guarantee you get more, she was careful to say that, but it affects the court's equitable distribution analysis. You mentioned he has a business partner now, she said. The woman from the restaurant. Are they professionally entangled? I thought about it. They have a joint project, a development in Scott's Addition. Any shared financial exposure? I didn't know yet, but I was going to find out. The attorney filed for legal separation the following Monday. Fletcher was served at his office on a Tuesday. He called me from the parking garage, voice unsteady, saying he hadn't thought I would actually. That he thought we could talk, that he loved me, and this wasn't what it looked like. It was our anniversary dinner, Fletcher, I said. You brought her to our anniversary dinner. Silence. I'm going to need you to vacate the condo by the end of the month, I said. My attorney will be in touch about a temporary living arrangement order. He vacated by the 28th. Here is what the next 4 months looked like, because I think people skip over this part and it matters. It was hard. Not in the way I expected. I had braced for devastation, for the kind of grief that makes you unable to function, but the actual hardness was more bureaucratic than emotional. It was paperwork and deadlines, and sitting across from people in conference rooms, and having to recount the same facts, again and again without letting your voice shake. It was logging into the joint account to find that Fletcher had withdrawn $2,800 3 days after being served. Money he'd put in, technically, but still. And having to call my attorney and file an emergency motion for a freeze on joint assets. This is actually good, my attorney told me. Documented financial bad behavior during pending divorce proceedings. Judge will not love this. I started keeping a spreadsheet. Every withdrawal, every date, every account. I am a compliance analyst. This is what I do. I also started talking to Deb more. I started going to the farmer's market on Sunday mornings by myself, which I had never done because Fletcher wasn't interested. I started actually cooking, on weeknights, real cooking, not just assembling things from the deli counter. I made a mushroom risotto one Thursday and stood at the stove, stirring it for 40 minutes and thought, there are worse ways to spend an evening. The discovery phase turned up things I hadn't known. Fletcher had been paying for hotel stays. I found the records through the business credit card statements, which were technically marital financial disclosures, going back 11 months. He and Tara had been together for almost a year. The development project in Scott's Addition was real, but the financial structure of the partnership was irregular in ways that his own accountant flagged during discovery. There was a $40,000 personal loan Fletcher had taken from the firm's operating account without formal documentation. Not embezzlement, exactly. He was a co-owner, but messy. Very messy. Tara, it turned out, was not a passive participant. She had been the one to encourage him to move forward with separating, to take the joint account funds when he did, to believe that I was the kind of woman who would fall apart. She had, according to a text chain that surfaced in Discovery, called me that spreadsheet type, which, honestly, fair. Mediation was scheduled for December. I walked into that room wearing a dark gray pantsuit and carrying a folder that was 1.5 inches thick. My attorney sat to my left. Fletcher sat across from me with his attorney, a man I'd met once at a firm party, and who had seemed perfectly pleasant in that context. Fletcher looked like he hadn't been sleeping well. His collar was slightly wrong, one side folded under. I noticed that. I noticed it, and I felt, briefly, something soft and sad, because I had spent 5 years straightening his collars, and I was not going to do that anymore, and there was a version of me who would have grieved that deeply. But that version had been sitting at a table in Marigold, watching a woman in a dusty rose dress laugh at her husband's jokes. The mediator ran through the asset inventory. The condo was the centerpiece. It had appreciated by approximately $74,000 since we purchased it. The Richmond market had been good to us, and the question was how to divide the equity. Fletcher's attorney argued for a buyout or a sale. My attorney presented 18 months of mortgage contribution records, plus documentation of the $2,800 withdrawal after service, plus a letter from the forensic accountant, noting the irregularities in Fletcher's business finances. The mediator called a short break. When we reconvened, Fletcher's attorney made a counter-proposal. Fletcher would waive his claim to the condo, equity entirely in exchange for my waiving any claim to his business assets, and the personal injury settlement he'd received 2 years prior. A car accident, $40,000, which I had always considered his money and had never touched. My attorney looked at me. I looked at the folder in front of me, 1.5 inches thick. Yes, I said. By December 17th, the condo was mine. My name only, on the deed, recorded with the city of Richmond. The divorce was finalized in February, 6 months after I sat across from Fletcher and Tara at a window table in Carytown and ordered the duck confit. I told my mom on a Sunday afternoon, sitting at her kitchen table in Roanoke, with cups of tea going cold between us. She didn't say I told you so about the separate bank account. She just put her hand over mine and kept it there. I took Miso for a long walk that evening, through the neighborhood we'd always walked through together, past the houses with the Christmas lights still up in January, past the coffee shop where Fletcher and I used to read on weekend mornings. Miso stopped to investigate every tree. The sky was that particular pale gray blue that Richmond gets in winter. the color of old pewter, and it was cold enough that my breath showed. I thought about the shoebox of sketches on the closet shelf. I had kept them. I don't know exactly why. Maybe because they weren't about him and me. They were about the lamp, the building, the dog and the sun. They were just things he'd seen and noticed. I could keep the noticing without keeping the rest. The condo's south-facing windows are still there. In the afternoon, the kitchen still fills up with that gold light, and I still make risotto on Thursday nights sometimes. And Miso still finds the same patch of floor to sleep in. I am 37 years old. I know things now that I didn't know at 32, when I walked down a gravel path in the rain toward a man who was crying because he loved me, and maybe he did. And maybe love is not always enough of anything to matter. What I know is this. That night at Marigold, something in me decided not to fall apart. I don't take full credit for it. I think it was just something that happened, some quiet part of me that had been paying attention all along and knew that the worst thing I could do was make a scene in a restaurant. And the best thing I could do was go home and start a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet is still on my laptop. I don't open it anymore, but I haven't deleted it either. Some things you just keep.